The Hundred Years' War wasn't just a war, it was an age. An entire era of blood and ambition that stretched across generations. From 1337 to 1453, England and France battled in one of the longest and most dramatic conflicts in world history. It wasn't a single endless fight, but a rolling thunderstorm of battles, fragile truces, betrayals, and devastating revivals. At the core of it all was one burning question: who deserved the crown of France? Yet beneath that crown lay something far deeper: national identity, pride, and survival itself. The spark was lit in 1328, when Charles IV of France died without a male heir. The throne passed to his cousin, Philip VI, but across the English Channel, Edward III of England believed he had a stronger claim. Through his mother, Isabella of France, Edward was the grandson of Philip IV, giving him royal French blood. The French nobility rejected this argument, invoking a law that excluded inheritance through the female line. To Edward, it wasn't just politics, it was an insult, a denial of his rightful place. In 1337, his response was bold and furious. He declared himself King of France. That act of defiance didn't just ignite a war. It opened a wound that would bleed for more than a century. The early years were a nightmare for France. In 1346, the Battle of Crécy stunned the world. English armies, smaller and less glamorous, wielded a new weapon of terror: the longbow. 6 feet of carved yew, capable of firing arrows that pierced armor, it was the great equalizer of the age. French knights, proud and armored, were slaughtered in waves as arrow storms darkened the skies. This wasn't just a defeat, it was the death of the old order, a revelation that chivalry and cavalry no longer ruled the battlefield. The humiliation deepened in 1356 at the Battle of Poitiers. Once again, the English struck with precision, and this time they captured the French king, John II. Imagine the scene. The King of France, a monarch crowned with divine right, dragged into captivity by a foreign enemy. France was left shattered, its people burdened with crushing ransoms, its lands torn by rebellion and chaos. And while kings fought, a darker shadow swept the continent: the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, the plague killed nearly 1/3 of Europe's population. Villages vanished, fields lay untended, and fear consumed the land. For peasants, the Hundred Years' War wasn't about thrones or treaties, it was about surviving hunger, disease, and the endless raids of armies that stole food, burned homes, and left nothing but ashes. In 1360, there was a flicker of hope. The Treaty of Bretigny gave Edward III vast French territories, and in return, he agreed to renounce his claim to the French crown. But peace in this war was nothing but a pause in the storm. By 1369, hostilities roared back. France found new strength under Charles V, a shrewd king, and Bertrand du Guesclin, a general who refused to play by the old rules. Instead of noble clashes in open fields, du Guesclin waged a war of attrition raids, ambushes, and sieges. Slowly, the English grip began to slip. Then came Henry V, the English warrior king whose ambition knew no bounds. In 1415, with England itself still fragile, Henry crossed into France to seize glory. At Agincourt, he faced overwhelming French numbers. His soldiers were exhausted, drenched in rain, their supplies dwindling. But once again, the longbow proved decisive. French knights, charging across mud and mire, were slaughtered as arrow after arrow tore through their armor. By the end, thousands lay dead, and England had pulled off one of the most improbable victories in military history. Agincourt wasn't just a battle, it was a legend, a moment etched into the national identity of England. In 1420, the Treaty of Troyes delivered an astonishing victory for England. It declared Henry V the heir to the French throne, disinheriting the Dauphin, Charles VII. Henry even married Catherine of Valois, uniting the two royal lines. For England, the dream was close: the crowns of England and France, one and the same. But fate is cruel. Henry V died suddenly in 1422, leaving behind a 9-month-old son, Henry VI, a baby king in a brutal world. Just when it seemed France was broken forever, salvation came from the unlikeliest of places. Joan of Arc, a teenage peasant girl from Domremy, claimed visions of saints urging her to drive out the English. In 1429, she convinced Charles VII to let her lead an army to relieve Orleans. Against all odds, she succeeded. The siege was broken, and with it, France's spirit was reborn. Joan was no seasoned general, but her conviction, her fearlessness, and her faith ignited the French cause like wildfire. She became the symbol of hope, the voice that reminded a defeated people that their destiny wasn't lost. But Joan's triumph came with tragedy. In 1430, she was captured by the Burgundians, allies of the English. Sold, tried for heresy, and burned at the stake in 1431, she died at just 19 years old. Yet her death only strengthened her legend. Joan became a martyr, a saint in spirit if not yet in title, and her sacrifice pushed France forward with unshakable resolve. By the 1440s, France had changed. Its armies were more professional, its strategies more modern. Artillery-heavy cannons began to dominate the battlefield, reducing once impregnable castles to rubble. England, meanwhile, was fracturing. Civil war brewed at home, the Wars of the Roses leaving the country drained and distracted. France seized its chance. One by one, the English strongholds fell, and the dream of an English France faded into dust. The final blow came in 1453 at the Battle of Castellon. French artillery unleashed hellfire, pounding the English positions until they crumbled. This wasn't just a battle, it was the dawn of a new age. The age of castles, knights, and cavalry charges was over. Gunpowder had rewritten the rules of war. By the end of that year, the English were driven out, left with only Calais as a foothold. After 116 years of blood and fire, the war was done. The consequences were monumental. France emerged stronger, with a centralized monarchy and a fierce sense of national identity. England, humiliated and weakened, turned inward, spiraling into decades of civil war. Militarily, the conflict signaled the death of medieval warfare and the rise of modern armies. And culturally, it gave us legends Henry V, Edward the Black Prince, and above all, Joan of Arc, the girl who became the heart of a nation. But beyond the crowns and treaties, the 100 Years' War left a deeper scar. For the millions who lived and died during it, it was a time of fire and famine, of plague and despair. The story of the 100 Years' War isn't just about kings and generals. It's about ordinary people caught in the gears of history, whose suffering paid the price for ambition. It was a century of blood, but also a century of transformation. Out of its ashes, modern France was born, and the medieval world gave way to something new. The 100 Years' War was not only the end of an era, it was the beginning of another. And if you found this story as fascinating and haunting as we did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. Because history isn't just the past, it's the mirror that shows us who we are today. And the stories we uncover here will keep you questioning, wondering, and hungry for more. But what really made this war so extraordinary wasn't just its scale, it was its endurance. Think about it. Entire generations were born and died knowing nothing but war. Children who grew up hearing stories of conquest became adults who buried their own sons in the same fields. Entire towns vanished, languages shifted, and faith itself was tested.